Tiffany, for bringing us here in your home. So we have gotten together to have a chat that needed to happen during this time right now. So we have gathered bloggers from around Louisiana, and we wanted to address this situation because it needs to be addressed. And I think this is something that needs to be done, especially for the future of our children. This affects all of us. And I hope with this conversation, it'll lead you guys to have the conversation yourselves and not be scared to open up and actually ask questions based on what's going on now. So let's dive in on these questions and let's see what happens.
Great. Explain systemic racism and how it affects minorities.
Well, I guess I'll take that one. So, racism, just racism, period. Normally you have to have power over it. So what it is that, a black person can say, oh, I don't like white people, I don't hang around white people, and then we think, okay. But the racism has to be backed by that power to exclude us from healthcare, education, and employment. And systemic racism is actually woven into America. It's in the laws, and I think now it's come to a head, and that's why we have so much turmoil. Just kind of taking it back, like during the Emancipation Proclamation, which was in 1863, but really 1865, because it wasn't spread out to every state. So in 1865, the slaves are supposed to be free. Now we have the problem of how do we get this labor done? How do we get the free labor that we had before that we're not able to get done now? And so this is where it went into. It went into the prison system. And so that's why that was their kind of safeguard, like, okay, we'll offer you free labor, but we'll have to do it for those that are deemed bad, right? So just to kind of break it down, crime is directly related to poverty. And black people are twice as likely as whites to live in poverty. And so when you're in an impoverished area, guess what? There's poorly funded schooling. And then crime rates are up as well. Black people make up, say, 13% of the population, but yet 40% are in prison. And that was the caveat that was woven into the Constitution, woven into the laws, and the people that were supposed to protect us, and everybody was supposed to be created equal. It essentially wasn't, because that was the game plan, and I think everyone's starting to wake up to it, and they're mad. If you guys have ever seen When They See Us, great movie, maybe just check it out whenever you all get a chance, but a lot of times it's coerced for them to say, oh, okay, well, they're not going to believe your story, take 5 years for stealing a pack of gum, or take 5 years because you were in the wrong area at the wrong time, and they get some free labor to meet their quota. And so now with the police brutality and everything like that, people are starting to wake up and say, hey, compared to this person, compared to a white person, why am I getting these long years? Or why am I beaten when I'm taken into custody? Why am I seen as such a threat? You have the mass murderers and the terrorists that are taken and protected into custody, but then you have the black person that's beaten, their face is disfigured, or they're killed in police custody. And so it's a problem for women like myself, and I'm a single mom. So it's a problem for me, and it's also a problem for other people, because if something goes wrong and we need to call the police, how do we feel comfortable doing that? Right. If we're scared something's gonna happen, if we're not gonna be treated the same, how do we know that it's not gonna be twisted and it's like the people that are there to protect us aren't? And I'm not saying all police, but I'm saying the ones that are doing this. Right. And so that's why people are angry, and they're not thinking, and they're flashing out, with emotion for the simple fact that you guys are enslaving us to get the free labor, but it's not the same. And no matter if, two guilty people, but yet this person skates and this person doesn't. A woman lied because she wanted her child to go to a better school district, and yet I think she's getting 5 years, but then other people are not. They're skating away because either they have money or they're white. And so it's not okay, we're mad. And I think everyone, just to understand, we're not mad at everyone that's white. We're mad at racism. We're mad at systemic racism that keeps us from getting the jobs to get out of poverty, to get our child in schools, to get the job that we can take our child to private schools. So it affects all of us, because it's like, how do we elevate? How do we elevate? How do we get out of that poverty-stricken neighborhood?
They made a comment that I want to touch on with education. And so now that you see that they have law enforcement on the campuses for protection, we all want law enforcement around. But if you recall the situation, I think happened in Florida, Alabama, the 6-year-old was kind of misbehaving and they arrested the 6-year-old. A little girl handcuffed her and took her out. So they're saying the statistics she brought up is other statistics of black kids are getting suspended more likely than other races, and then it's same fracture, same situation, but we're more likely to be suspended, or we're more likely to be pushed into the criminal system. So the and a lot of jobs, require degrees, require certain education experience. But if you're being pushed into the juvenile justice system, then you're lagging with some of these requirements that will get you these jobs that may afford you a better life, that would take you away from poverty, but you're kind of being led back to poverty because some of these rights and privileges are being taken away from you so young. This girl is 6 years old. Why wasn't she taken to the dean? Why wasn't she taken to the guidance counselor? She was taken to jail. So it's different ways they're handling minorities on these campuses when we need the education to pursue or promote better lifestyles, but this is the route they're taking us with the juvenile justice, and then you go back to being in prison, giving free labor to the state for back to slavery and everything. So education is something I believe strongly in, even if it's academic or just self education. But we all need that general basics to start a foundation. And if those are being taken, they're saying a black male, I can't tell you the statistic, but the numbers of black men graduating is very low. It's lower than any other race. So how can a black family survive if these opportunities are being taken away from them, and not proper guidance or proper the same protocol
is being taken? And I think it's 6 times as likely. Black students, I believe, are either 4 or 6 times more likely to be suspended.
I think a lot of people, obviously we know the blatant racism exists. There are people in this world that legitimately don't like another human being based on their color. And I think people miss the systemic issue that they think well, I like black people, so what's the problem? And you miss why are things the way they are? You have to look back at the history, and if you don't understand that, it's easy to brush somebody off and be like, well, it's 2020, you have every opportunity. But they don't have every opportunity, and there's a reason that's happened, and we have to be aware and learn and change it.
I think it's really interesting because people who really love America, America does no wrong, or people who, they're like, oh, business owners, we have to support business owners. If you are a business owner and you are in the construction industry, you should be really upset about systemic racism, because when you go out and you're bidding for a job and there is prison labor prices versus what you're going to be charging, then prison labor, they would always pick the prison labor over your company, which is literally not benefiting your neighborhood, your community, your family, your kid. Yes, they are privately owned. I mean, I can go invest in a prison if I want to. That's not okay. So if
similar situation with other people of color as
yes.
well, right?
So if you love America, then I think you should really have a problem with that, because if you're a business owner, then you're going to get beat out every time too.
Right.
I wanted to make a couple of comments because I feel like when I kind of had the same kind of view of racism. I kind of thought of racism as bad. It's people that don't like somebody because they're black or different than them. And so when I started really wanting to have hard conversations with people, I was like, I really need to have a better understanding of what all of this means. And I found a book that really went through and talked about what it is, the differences. And she brought up a really good point and you said it before, that racism has to have power. And she talked about the difference and where people will say, well, I've experienced racism is really prejudice. It's not racism. And then what she did was go in length to explain how racism and sexism kind of are more, as a man, can you really experience sexism? Well, no, because men generally have the power. And it's the same thing with racism. Can a black person be racist against a white person? No. Can they be prejudiced against them? Yes. And so that definition, I feel really helped me be okay, now I feel like I can make a better argument of explaining to people that racism doesn't, like, I'm racist. Like, I have benefited from things. It has taken me a long time to be able to come to terms with that and say that out loud, and I think that's a very hard thing for people to say sometimes, but there are ways that I was raised that I don't think it was intentionally, but it was, and it changed how I felt about certain situations. And I think that's where it has to go back to the deep part of it, that it's a system of things that have been put into place. It's not necessarily emotional. Prejudice is more emotional. Racism is more of like a fact-based structure of how things have been done. And that's kind of, I think, where my mind was like, okay, wait, I understand this on a different level at that point.
Yeah.
So, hey, it's easier to be like, okay, that doesn't mean that I've done something to hate somebody. It means that I have participated in a system
Right.
that has stacked the deck against other people.
Right.
You know, just in general, the human race has had there's a long period of just not being very nice to other people.
Yeah.
We just seem to think that at some point we have to be better than somebody else.
Right.
Like, I
Based
don't
on
know
something
why.
you can't control.
Yeah.
That's the other piece that I think that people miss is that like it's based. I literally could not have
Right.
said. I had no say in what I looked like,
Yes.
how tall I was, what shade of brown I was, or shade of brown I wasn't. I was not, and now I want to say that I'm better than somebody or benefit from being better than somebody
Right.
on something I couldn't control and neither could they.
Why white people feel like they cannot ask questions. I put in parentheses, we can discuss culture and how you can push past the fear of discussing it.
Getting canceled.
I was actually talking about this with my husband. I watch a lot of movies of just historical stuff. So I've noticed that aside from movies, this is real. Like, white people used to get killed for helping runaway slaves. They used to have like nigger lover just painted on their dead bodies. So I feel like just the same as it's actually hurting us as past generations of slavery, I feel like that's the same thing for white people. They're afraid to speak out on things. They're afraid to kind of, you know, say, hey, this is wrong to their grandparents and their parents because they all believe the same thing. And I think it's still there. I mean, it's not going to be as crazy as it was back then, but there's a lot of people who have spoken out online and their relatives are not rocking with it. It's different. So I really feel like they're afraid. And some of them might be afraid of realizing that they are racist, you know. And then a lot of them are afraid of, you know, the finger being pointed at them, and then they start turning pink and then start crying, and then like just like the videos, like they just start spazzing out, and it's like, sweet, we can talk about this. Like, let's just sit down and chat. But I think it's just fear, to be honest.
But what I love about this movement in particular is that the most people are coming out than ever before against racism. And that just gives me hope, like, for my kids' future, because I've never seen that before. Large companies, Ben & Jerry's, like
Amazon.
Netflix, like, they're finally saying, okay, this
I
is
so excited to see that
wrong.
little banner on the
I know, me too.
But did you see how many people that were white that were like, I did not come to Amazon for,
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Too, that concept is. So like that's called white fragility. So that's basically where like a white person, whenever you're confronted with racism and talking about race, your concept of like everything you know about yourself gets challenged. And so it's like also like you're attacking a person's like identity. And so white people have a hard time being like dealing with racism because like nobody wants to think of themselves as a bad person. You want to like think of yourself as like, it's called like we want to be consistent. Like it's a psychological phenomenon. Nobody wants to think that they're bad. So that's like kind of where that comes from is the white fragility concept. People have a hard time like when you're challenging their concept of whiteness, it's like everything about who they are is challenged, you know? And so like that's the thing that I think is hard for white people to talk about is like not only what have our ancestors done, because there's things that my ancestors have done that I know about. Like 2 of my relatives, like they lived in Mississippi and they murdered a black man and they came to Louisiana for this. And now like my husband, he's half black and I'm half a mixed child, but it's like I think that's kind of like how God works, that he can break generational, you know, cycles. But like that's kind of like, I mean, people have to face like what your family has done and what all white people have done, and that's a hard thing to talk about and ask a question. It's like like it's like challenging everything you are for white people. It doesn't make any sense that I've said it. I'm just like talking, you know.
I think that's a really good point, and I think too, you know, I am a person that I want people to be comfortable and happy with the interaction that I have with them, and I'm always very nervous to say anything that is going to upset somebody. And so I think for me, I've put myself out a little bit to know that I may say something wrong, but to have an open enough rapport with the person and for them to be able to correct that, and for me to genuinely apologize for the misstep and then work forward from there. And I think in the past, I just avoided certain conversations because I didn't want to say the wrong thing, and I just overthought my own stuff.
Right. I think people too, like just speaking for myself, like I don't want to ever say anything that's going to offend somebody, even if it's like the right thing to say. And like you look at the internet right now on social media and like you see people getting ripped apart for not saying something perfectly or saying the wrong words, and people are trying, and there's just like such a lack of grace. And like this is what needs to be happening, is like face-to-face conversations and having empathy with one another, and not just like shutting people down on the internet when they're not saying exactly what you want them to say, or they're not saying enough, or they said
That's
too
how we got
much.
here, was that lack of empathy for
Right.
each other and seeing
We
people
quit
as
listening to
people.
people's stories, and we
Yeah.
let
And
the
quit loving
internet, like,
And
That's
also,
huge.
also too, like to just touch on what you said, is that we need to also understand that when we come to somebody, we need to come to them with correct information too. Like, so there needs to be a little bit of due diligence on yourself instead of just coming to someone and expecting them to tell you and then correct you, and then you get upset because it's like, well, I was just asking, and now they're aggravated with me. Like, we have to be able to put ourselves a step backwards too and kind of allow that conversation, and then know, you know, we're coming asking a specific question, and if we say something wrong, then take that responsibility and move on too. And not just like, I think the other thing is sometimes people will say it and not want to take responsibility, and they just go silent. And we have to stop doing that. If you're going to say it publicly, you need to apologize publicly or whatever, and that's part of owning it. I feel like with my own children, I say the same thing, is it's not just about being sorry. It's sorry and then doing work after it to be better.
Explain microaggressions and micro-racism and how it affects people of color. I'd like to answer. Okay, so for me, I was raised in a place where it's too tiny to be real racist. Like, of course it happens, but like, it's just too tiny for you to be racist, because your kid's probably going to marry somebody that don't look like you. You just got to get over it. So when I moved here, and I didn't notice a lot of things until I met my husband, and he was like, when he would come visit me, he was like, what is going on? Why is these white people talking to me? And I was like, what are you talking about? So I didn't notice it until I moved here. And it's like microaggression is like little things. Like sometimes when I go to Walmart and it's just me, and it's like my kids, or it's just me, and I will almost have to run somebody over just to get by in the aisle. And then I'll like watch a little white lady pass by, I'm like, oh, excuse me, sorry, you know. Or it's like if you speak to someone that's white and they're like, you know, or you walk in the store and they kind of look at you like you don't belong there, or, you know, just like it's those tiny things. But I feel like the effects that it's had for me is it has made me feel like, one, I don't want to go places sometimes. Like certain places I just don't want to go. Or I'm like, if we go, I feel like I have to take my husband. Like, we're going to go as a family unit, because we get more respect when it's all four of us. I know, and like a lot of people don't believe that, but I'm like, I don't, like a lot of times I just don't do certain things by myself or with my kids, or visit a certain place. Or if I visit a certain place, I need to look a certain way. Sorry, I can't be like the white mom with the Suburban and sweatpants and a shirt and a hat. I need to put on clothes. Like, I need to have jeans, and I need to look well kept, even though I feel like I always look well kept. But I need to look a certain way. I need to speak a certain way. I need to, when I'm going there, like you said in the last video we recorded, I need to be direct. This is where I'm going. I'm speaking to you properly. Like, I am intentional about what I'm about to do. I can't just float around, because then I am kind of brushed off or overlooked. Or like when I first moved here, a great example, I went to Dillard's. Dillard's is legit my favorite place to shop. Like, especially when you go at the end of the month and you know everything on sale is on sale. So I'm like, I'm going to Dillard's. I got there and again, this is not like my dealers back home where one, everybody that works there is brown. The only people who may be white are like very few, and even they're nice. So I get to this dealers that nobody is black. So I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But no one helped. No one offered help, and they wasn't doing nothing. It was like Wednesday. There was nobody in there because I checked. I was like, maybe they're busy.
And normally they're all over you.
Yes,
They're
and
like,
like especially at dealers because they make commission.
Yeah.
I was like, nobody asked for if I needed help. Nobody asked if I needed anything. But like the one thing that I did pick, I was like, I couldn't tell if it was on sale. I was like, is this on sale? She was like, no, it's full price. And I was like, you didn't even look at it. Like, how would you know if it's full price or not? But it's little tiny ways. They may not be able to turn you down on a housing loan or not hire you, but some people feel that subconscious need to elevate themselves over you, even in small social situations like at a gas station or grocery store, which is like mind-blowing that you carry around that much hate that you could be like that.
Right.
But that's kind of like my experience with microaggressions.
I have an example as well. It was in college. I was riding from an event in Baton Rouge. It was like a benefit kind of event for a campus group, and we were all part of it. We were all riding there in front of Hammond. And in the car, it was one other white girl and two black girls and one black guy. And I just remember, I don't know how we got in the conversation, but on the way back, the other white girl says, man, girl, you know, you always act like a white girl. You don't act like a black girl. You know, that's just your personality. I think that's why we get along so good. And in the back, I didn't agree. I did not agree with her.
I saw that in the last video. She's like,
I'm sorry.
I think we all felt that, like, whoa.
I know. And I was in the back seat, and I didn't agree, and I didn't laugh or anything like that, but I did not speak up. And I will admit, like, that was wrong with me to not call that girl out because, I mean, I could feel the tension. We were all in one car, and everybody was just like, and they didn't really know to laugh it off. But the one of the black girls was like, "See, I don't like when girls say that. I don't like when girls say that because you know, we shouldn't be any certain way." And you know, I just kind of like nodded my head in the back, and I just didn't want to add to the conversation. But now looking back, I mean, I should have spoken up against that, you know, because it made me feel comfortable. Think about how it made the other people in the car feel.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just one thing. And I hear stuff like that all the time, even today.
What is a white interest or what is a black interest? Like, and like, where did that start? Because like, what, like, people say that about my husband because he did theater and he did tons of stuff, and like, I'm just like, well, what made people decide that, like, you know, what people had to do, like, you know, what
do
people
it
were
with
like,
everything with women's girls stuff too. Like, oh, they can't do it. It's a girl.
or they have to wear pink or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
it's like,
just
people will say that to my boys sometimes. You know, that's a girl thing, and I'm like, why do we compartmentalize everything?
why?
And it's always
Yeah.
something like he's cleaning or cooking or
Dance
or dance.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I thought that was like a normal
But
thing.
yeah, no, it
That just like
I
it
feel
makes me mad. I'm like, it's like you should just let people be. You know,
I got a lot of that growing up though. I mean, I'm weird. I like documentaries and books, and you know, people would be like, "You look like you're white," and I would be like, "What does
What does that even mean?
is education white?"
Only for white people. Stop.
Yeah, and I feel like even as black people, we got to stop saying it to our kids because then it just kind of makes them feel like you're not supposed to be educated. But once they grow up, you're like, you need to go to college. But you know, I think also the people who say it, they've been given an image too that they have to live up to. They've been given, maybe somebody told them, or maybe they were turned down for a school or an application because they were black, and maybe they don't want to. Then maybe they don't want their child to put themselves out there too much and get crushed. You know, so maybe they're like, nah, don't do that. You know, just do this here. You know.
It's just a negative connotation to being black. So it's almost like, well, I'm fighting not to be black because I want to be around all of my friends. I want to be around, and if you go to a private school and there's a lot of white girls, you kind of just make yourself small because like, I still want to be with my friends. I still want to be with my friends. So when people say that, and I find that more in the black community, when we say that, it's almost like we're putting blacks down and we want to be anything but black.
Yeah.
And it also works the other way around because my aunt and my mom, they like, when they see a homeless person on the street, they like to help. But my aunt, I think over the years, I've noticed she would make comments like, why are you white and poor? You should have made it. You know, this is your country. So it's like the fact that we get this stigma, it's like they expect white people to live up to those too. So you can't be white and poor. You can't be white in the trailer. You can't be doing this because like you should have made it. This is your country. Like, you know, you guys put us down for so many years. Like, what are you doing on the side of the street? Like, my aunt goes ham. It's like, it's really mean.
Oh gosh.
It's really mean because it's like, you know, it's not like a group type of thing. It's individually. Like, if you mess up in your life, you made the wrong choices, that's what happens. But
That makes sense.
these microaggression stuff really affects people because you look at people a certain way. It's just, it's such a
And the thing is, she really didn't even see anything wrong with what she said. The white girl that made the comment, like to her, you know, that was just like a normal conversation, and that's the problem. You know, we have to look at what are we saying? Like, is it offensive what you're saying? What is the meaning behind what you're saying?
Yeah.
Like it makes people, microaggressions make people feel like they don't belong, like, you know, just in
Yeah.
general. And it's like, I watched this video about it, and it was talking about how they were doing an interview, and it was like a white man and an Asian man, and the white man told the Asian guy, you speak English really well. And it made him feel like, because he was born in America, it made him feel like he was a foreigner in his own country. And that's kind of like what microaggressions do. They make you feel like you don't belong, and they're aggressive. They're meant to make you feel different and to make you feel less than, or make to put you down and feel negatively about yourself.
Right.
It's just so sad, and it happens like so because like everything is like integrated into this country, and like systemic racism is so like embodied, and everything we see, it's like can be so buried in your subconscious to where like you sometimes, if you're doing it, you don't even know you're doing it.
Right.
Sometimes it's meant to be done per like intentionally, but a lot of times it's like subconscious. You know, they're not thinking about it.
Yeah, there was this Facebook feed, this Ethiopian girl was talking about what's going on now, and this white guy, I guess he knows her, and he was saying, you know, back in your country, if you were to say something politically, you would get arrested, which is true. And he said, for you to say these things is just kind of out of line because you are a privileged guest in this thing. It's like, it was weird, and then a lot of Ethiopians started jumping in. I jumped in, I'm like, excuse me. And then he's like, you guys know me really well. We need to have this conversation in person. That's not what I meant. But it's like, it's that microaggression. It's like, okay, just because I'm Ethiopian and I'm here, that doesn't mean, so you're saying I can't speak out on injustice at all? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And then privileged guest just makes me itch. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that was disgusting.
No, I see that a lot though. Even the lady that went to the church I attend, she posted one time, basically, you people, and it said, you people should be happy to be Americans because people fought for you. Well, honey, my great grandfather fought too. My brother fought too.
Right.
And I messaged her. I was like, I don't think you, because I really didn't think she knew, but I was like, honey, if you say you people, the only people who complain about America are usually non-white people. So you are essentially, you can't post about Jesus over here, and then you want to say you people over here. Jesus did not co-sign that message. Don't do that. You know, you need to separate things. But like that idea that because you live here, you should not complain. No, that is the essence of America, because you can't complain.
They've been complaining for years.
Which is crazy that people are mad at Kaepernick, and I'm like, no, he can complain. Yeah. He can kneel. That is his actual American right, is to not stand for the pledge. Especially, and I feel like this is the last thing I'm gonna say, is the most American to see something wrong with your country and love it enough to say something. If you saw your kids standing in the street and they were going to get hit by a car, would you just look at your kid and say, I ain't going to say nothing? No, you would say something. You would do something. If you do love this country and you see a problem, you say something.
Right. Yes.
What is white privilege, and how can you leverage it to uplift people of color?
I can start. I'm not white, but I will start. I feel like, and I will say this because I think of conversations, the conversation that I had, because I have to break it down, because my husband's wife, was very offended about the term white privilege. Because in his mind, people equate white privilege to racist. You're automatically a racist because you have white privilege. You see what I'm saying? So in his mind, I'm clearly not racist. Married to you, mixed children, we adopted, we're in the process of adopting your black nephew. Like, clearly I'm not racist. I cannot have white privilege. Like, that was his whole mentality. And so for me, the way that I have explained it to people is that privilege is something that you have that you did nothing to earn. So for example, I was raised in a 2-parent household. My mom is a nurse, my dad is an engineer. If I fall flat on my face tomorrow, I'm like, I'll just go home and live with my parents. Like that is a real thing for me. Like if I go broke, if we can't afford to pay the bills, I'm just gonna make a phone call and everything's gonna be fine. That for me is a privilege. It's not a white privilege because I am not white, but it is a privilege in the fact that there are people who, if they fall on their face, there's nothing they can do about it. And so I feel like white privilege, taking that example of what privilege is something that you get to experience simply because of skin color. It's nothing that you earned. It has nothing to do with the way that you act or your core values. You are not different because you have white privilege. You just are simply white, and there are experiences that you are allowed to that you are allowed to have simply because of skin color. Was the way that I explained it to my husband, because I think he feels like that term, like.
Right. Oh yeah.
Like you're punching him in the face, like, oh, it's just white privilege. And I feel like part of that is that it was thrown as a term. Like I feel like it has been a term that has been used to silence people. Your opinion doesn't matter because you have white privilege. So you're not allowed to be a part of this conversation because your white privilege won't allow you to be a part of this conversation. So he's like, oh, so I can't even have an opinion. So I feel like it's gotten this negative connotation because everybody tells you, oh, you have white privilege. Right. Here comes white privilege trying to tell me their poor little burdens. Right. And it's not that. It truly is just your experience has been different simply because of skin
And it
color.
doesn't mean a white person can't have a bad life or have horrible things happen to them, but it does mean it didn't happen because of their skin color.
Yeah. Like in the list of things that you have to deal with in life, your skin color won't be it. So like when I have to talk to my 2-year-old about why the little kid at Chick-fil-A won't play with her, and when you talk to your kid about it, it won't be most likely because your kid is white. But it will be most likely because my kid is black. Yes. Or when they start driving and I start, telling them if you get pulled over, most of the time you may not have to have that conversation with your kid. Right. Like that's. And I think I met with a friend and she was like, I went down a list of white privilege and I didn't really hit any of these. And I was like, just because you didn't hit the list, I was like, honey, it's just saying that just in the list of things that, trouble your life, your skin color won't be one of them. Because she didn't grow up, rich and had a lot of other privileges. She might not even have the privileges you had or that I had from having 2 parents. But just your skin color is not going to be a problem. And there's been a lot of people who have come out, a lot of white people who have come out and given examples of, hey, I was with some black kids one day and, they weren't doing anything. I was really the one that was probably doing something, but they got accused that I didn't. Like the police officer was like, you can go home, and took them to jail. Like little examples like that, or that's a big one. You went to jail. But like examples like that, like that's white privilege. But how do you think you can leverage that to pave the way or balance like the scale for people of color?
I'd like to chime in on that one. So like something that I think because we're all bloggers, we're all influencers, something that you can open up your platform to feature people of color and feature black voices so they can be heard and to be represented, and to really, if you have a brand, wants to work with you, you can say like, I've decided personally to take a stand in terms of like when a brand reaches out to me and I want to ask them like, what is your stand on Black Lives Matter? And depending on what that stand is, if they're not in support of it, if they're not working towards diversity, I don't want to work with that brand. And if they do support Black Lives Matter movement, then you can be like, okay, well, I'll work with you, and then here are my friends, people of color, people in this room, you could say, and really be like, well, here are people that you can work with so you can feature diversity. Because I had a brand reach out to me, and it was like a sunglasses brand or something, and they had all white people on their Instagram feed, and I was like, well, I'm not working with you because you don't celebrate diversity. You don't celebrate what are a community that is from different backgrounds, and it bothers me because I think like, it just makes me so mad. But it's like, I think in that sense, as a blogger, that's how you can use it. But there's so many other ways. Like you can also advocate for people in your job. Like you're like, well, this person is really like done amazing things, and we should look more at like qualities of people versus like You know, it's kind of hard to put
like
into
that.
words.
No,
So
I like what you're
qualities,
saying,
yeah.
and I think so. I had a blogger friend from New Orleans who's black, who we were having dinner one night, and she was talking about just the lack of opportunities. Sometimes, like brands will reach out, and I listened, and I instead of like being like, well, you know, I mean, that doesn't affect me. Like, I can't really change what brands. I was like, you know what? From now on, if I get asked to do anything and they ask me to partner with somebody, I'm only going to send them people of color. And it's worked in some opportunities. I've been able to bring somebody on with me on a campaign, but it took a conscious decision on my part. And I'm not, this is really hard to talk about because I don't want it to come across like, well, this is how I saved this situation, because it's a very small, minute thing. But it was something that, if we can reflect on conversations that we have with black women or other black influencers, and they tell us challenges they're having, I think us looking at that and not always just brushing off things as easy or just as like simple or small, and making those little, trying to do something actively. Same with, I'm in a group and they were talking about issues that we've had in our school system, and I'm a doer. Like, I want to do, but I'm also white, and I am the mother of a black son, but it's not the same thing. I don't know, but our experiences in school are still different because I'm white. So nobody was really kind of like coming together with what they wanted to do with it. And so I said, you tell me, I'll write the letter to the school board and we can all sign it, but tell me what you need. And I think that's the thing too, is not just participating in these conversations as a listener, is realizing that sometimes like it might come across to the school board differently from a group of moms or a mixed group of moms where it's white moms and black moms coming together. But to be the facilitator sometimes, I think, is where I really am trying to look where I can use my privilege more of being that facilitator to help when I hear things.
I think too, just like
It did.
Yes, it does.
It did.
I think like just even like small scale, because like my job doesn't involve other people. I paint, like, you know, whatever. Just facilitating conversations and like being willing to like bring it up with people and like start the conversation with your friends, or like, or if you're only surrounded by white people, be like, let's talk about this and see like how this affects our lives and what we're doing to make a difference in like our like small community, because that's where it all is going to start changing, is like in rooms like this and face to face. So like being willing to be uncomfortable and to bring it up in the first place, I think is huge.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes white people, they get scared of being in that problem. Like, if they say something like, oh great, like, you know, drag me down with the mess. But you understand, like, that's the responsibility that comes with it though. I was watching a movie called The Banker, or Bankers, on Amazon. Everyone else should watch it. It's great. But it's literally white privilege, because this man is a genius. It's based on a real man. He's really smart. He wanted to own property, real estate. But he needed a white man's face to do it. So he literally, day and night, he taught this man how to do algebra, how to do simple things, so that he can sign off the contracts. And they were able to own, I think, up to 200 properties. But they moved to Texas and they found out that the guy was black, because they were selling property to black people. So they were pretty much trying to make it so that black people can own property. They can give them out loans. They were like, hold up, you're giving loans to black people. And that's when things went left. And they found out that he was signing off with 2 black men, and everything just tumbled down. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, he went down as well, but it's like, we need you, because sadly, they don't legitimize black faces at all. Like, we can't, nothing that we say works. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to teach this man to do what you already know. Like, that was insane.
Had somebody be the face of your company.
Right.
And I want to bring on camera the topic of privilege, white privilege. Good Morning America. Y'all may have seen it. Good Morning America shared this black guy, and some of us are raising young black men, you know, sons that will be black men, future black men. And you know, the guy, his mom prepped him on how to go out in public. Don't sag your pants. Make sure you put your seatbelt on. Make sure you drive the speed limit. Make sure you don't go out with a muscle, you know, a white beater shirt on. Or he has so many things that he had to do before he start driving a car. So like if, with the white privilege or somebody of another color, you're just going to teach your child how to reverse, how to park, simple things. But as a black mom or black parents, we have to be mindful that, you know, our sons may be a target. So I told my husband, "Oh, we gonna buy our son a Subaru. That's like the most safest car."
Not right.
You
Not
know,
a
just
red one.
trying to. No, but we're just trying to make him go out and be safe and secure, but also have people look at him in a non-threatening way. That he, you know, my son I put out there when I started blogging, he's so sweet. He just want to be loved, and he's into science. He's into a lot of things, but unfortunately, other people will just see his skin color. They will never look at his resume or some of these things just because of the, like his outer appearance. But we have, as parents, have to teach our kids how to go out in this world, and sometimes our black boys don't have that same privilege. We have to worry about their safety. We have to worry about, you know, how they're going to conduct themselves in the you know, we all get frustrated. We all have conflict when we leave our homes, but we really have to go an extra mile with teaching our sons how to handle that conflict so they can come home and, you know, as they left. You know, so you go that extra mile with those black boys, with the white guys. You don't really think about that. You're like, all right, son, go get my grocery list.
Don't get in trouble.
You know, just all right. But with your black son, you're gonna be a little more cautious when you start driving. When he started driving or getting that independence, because you're starting to think about his life at this point, not that freedom or that independence or that milestone of, oh, my son got his 16, he's 16, he got his permit, you're free to pick your friends up. No, y'all keep your seatbelt on, make sure you drive the speed limit, don't be on the wrong side of town, make sure you know who's in this car, make sure your license is in a place where if you are pulled over, it's accessible. They don't think you're pulling for a gun. Those things are some of the things we have to put in our son's mind. But you know, that's not in every situation, because just drive, son, be safe, come home. But with black boys, you have to be more mindful because their life sometimes could be a threat.
I don't know how. Not how should I do that, but what are things that you see white people do where it becomes where they're not really being as helpful necessarily as they think.
I love that question. I recorded it.
That's a great question. Okay, got it.
I feel like maybe making that space, because sometimes, you know, like when maybe it's your turn for the mic, you're like, oh no, I'm gonna let such and such speak, you know, because it was their idea. One, it was their idea, but also two, because they're black. Or I feel like because I'm a doer, but I'm also kind of in your face, I would specifically say something like, don't do that, maybe, if Jesus didn't tell you that. But I'm one of those people that I would be like, you know, honestly, I may have been the person that signed the letter because I knew that it would get heard first. But these are the voices that this letter is based on. And I'm going to let them speak now. Because sometimes, you know, you just get marginalized. You really do. As a black person, you're just seen as, even this, like, complaining, and you're over the top. Angry, yes. And that's like crazy, because I was somewhere, like these two white girls were going off about something that just honestly nobody could change. That was just the system. And they were allowed to act a fool. But if it would have been a black person, that would have been a totally different situation. So sometimes, you know, just give this floor to them. That's what I would do.
I think honestly it's based on your intentions, and as long as you have a good heart and mind, you're fine. I noticed that, especially there's been some posts that's been going around on the right movies to watch, like not these white savior movies, as opposed to,
I saw that.
you know, but I feel like there's been a lot of people who genuinely did help, who were, you know, they made those biopics, and that's literally what happened, and they needed that hand to actually get things done. Like, sometimes a lot of white people like to make things a little negative, like, oh, you know, this white person helped, and that's the end of the movie. It's helpful that they were there, though, you know what I mean? But I think with the media, it's just the way that they portray it, because it's the white person, like they're the main actor, it's not the black people. That's the problem. They need to switch the main roles, but as for those stories, those people had good intentions in heart. They really wanted to help, so I feel like you can still keep doing what you're doing. And don't
not
care
feel guilty about it.
Right,
It was a post.
Yeah.
It was a post that came out earlier this week, and Kev on Stage really reposted it. But in Texas, the real estate agents are going to stop saying master bedroom.
Oh yes, I saw that.
Stop saying master bathroom. And his whole opinion was like, let's not take away from the situation. Some things don't add to the. Some things are not really highlight what we want to highlight. So whatever your focus is, whatever your intention is, if it's for that cause and that purpose, stick to your mission. But if it's not helping or benefiting, if there's nothing they really gain from it, then, let it be. But if you're being led to really push something or better somebody's life, including your own children, then you're not overcompensating. You're doing what God led you to do. But some situations, we all have to pick a battle. We can't fight them all. So I'm not going to jump on every situation and lose energy, divide myself too thinly. I want to focus on what really matters and what's going to, my most important is my family. So if it's going to better my son, better my daughter, my husband, okay, I'm all for it. I'm in love with all you ladies right now. I'm gonna support everything y'all have going on, but I'm not gonna divide myself too thinly where I'm not being help to anybody. So you'll know your own balance. But if you're being led to do it, don't feel guilty about it. And you don't have to overcompensate for anybody else who's not doing the same or carrying the same weight. So you find your balance and stick to it. That's what I was saying.
I actually have an example of two people who helped adopt or at least sponsor Africans from Africa, and they live in Utah. So it's this one lady, she treats the kids, well, they're adults, they're in college, but she says things in a weird way. Like, I know she wanted to work for the summer, and she told her neighbor, like, hey, I have this girl who wants to work. You can just give her, like, literally, she said 30 cents. Not even joking. 30 cents. You can give her some 30 cents, and then her name is Ivy. She's from Kenya. She told me about it. She was offended, and I'm like, she said, oh, well, you did not receive that much back home, so, you can take this. It's stuff like that. It's like you're doing this whole white savior thing. I took you from this country. You can take whatever you want because it's better than what you used to have. Mm-hmm. But the woman who took in my husband, she's amazing, and she's still helping out people back home where he's from. And I think it also places you in a situation where, especially with black people, you don't want to be so reliant on them to make them want to do those things too. So Tom, as soon as he got here, he started working. Hey, I don't need too much. Thank you for bringing me here. But I got it. You know what I mean? But you can see that there's people who are like that where they feel like, oh, I did so much, pat on the back, and I can treat them disrespectfully. We have people who are still loving, and they're still willing to help other people. So.
Right. Yeah.
As long as your intentions are good, you're fine. Like,
I think you're like afraid to help people too, because you're like, I don't want it to be perceived the right way. If like as white women,
Yeah.
just being
Perception.
helpful or kind to others, and like, what good is that going to do either?
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're right. No. I think that exactly what you said. Perception, I think, will get us in a world of trouble in general, because perception can take away from purpose. And I feel like there are things. I'm very Christian, so I cannot reflect on everybody in this group. That there are things that God asks us to do, period. And sometimes every single thing that goes back to there's a bigger problem right now than black and white. There's a bigger problem within guys and girls. There's a bigger problem than abortion and abortion, or pro-life and pro-choice. Like, it's big. Like, this is a huge, bigger thing than even what we're talking about in this room right now. But I think about my husband was very offended because a guy wrote a post because my husband likes to help, period. He doesn't care if you're black, he doesn't care if you're white, he is like a helper. That's what he does. But as a white male, anytime he helps, he just wants to save the world so that he can be on ESPN and he can get his own story. Like you can't do anything right because you were born white and male. So anything that you do has an underlying story about why you're doing it. You see what I'm saying? And so he gets he gets a lot of very pointed, like, I'm talking to you, like, without tagging you, I really am talking to you, and he knows it. You just want to use the little black boys to build your career, and you're just trying to build a name for yourself, and you're building it on our black slave boys' backs, like, and they will use this kind of, because he's a coach, I'm sorry, I didn't. For those of you who don't know, my husband's a football coach. So a lot of the football players are big black guys, you see what I'm saying? And so he gets a lot of, if he goes to an inner city school with a mostly black football team, no matter what he does, no matter how successful he is, because my husband eats, sleeps, and breathes football. You have to understand, like, if COVID has taught us nothing else, is that my husband loves football. Okay? We have watched every old football game, 1976 Pro Bowl. We have watched every draft. Like, every ESPN rerun, we have watched it. And he's a history guy as well. So he just looks into.
So sorry.
That's what we do at my house. It's been a long COVID, yeah. So, and he didn't know what to do. Like that's who he is. Like, this is what I do. I do football. So we're just gonna do more football and more research on football. That's what and I say all of that to say though, like, he cares. And so his whole thing is that I want to make the best team possible. That is his ultimate goal. But what it can come across as is, I'm a little white guy that's trying to save little inner city black kids. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what is your purpose? Going back to the original thing, his purpose is to help build programs that allow kids to be successful that may or may not have otherwise been successful. Because sometimes I know that we don't like, sports save the world. No, sports don't save the world, but sports do save the world for some people.
Right.
Some people would not have been able to even go to college. I'm not saying everybody's going pro. That not everybody's going to the NFL. Not everybody's going to the Major League Baseball. But some people would not have been able to go to college otherwise. You see what I'm saying? And so if he can get people those opportunities that they wouldn't have had, but if we spend our life in, what are they going to tell us? That so we have to have this pep talk, babe. We can't spend our life worried about other people and what they have to say, because people are always going to have stuff to say.
Do it full throttle, no regret, never come after you.
Apologizing for things that you do. Yeah.
Because they would talk, if he had the opportunity and he didn't have any black kids, then they would be like, so you just don't have black kids on your team? You know, like, you just have to just do it and be like, bite me. You know, like, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Listen to people of color and before we speak or more than we speak. Why do we listen when we speak?
I think when trying to understand the movement, there's only certain people that will be able to grasp it. And I think the reason why people are so angry is because our children are being slaughtered in the streets. You know, it's not okay. It's not a myth. It's not, we're not making it up. There's proof. There's videos. Like, we're being targeted and hunted down and killed. So no matter, you know, whether you're a Christian or not, everyone knows if it's right or if it's wrong. So if we're angry and you're uncomfortable, like in situations talking, understand how uncomfortable it is just, you know, going outside in the street. Like, no lie, no exaggeration, but I was actually nervous because I don't know the area. So even getting in here, I was like lost, and I was like, well, they see me going back and forth twice. But it's real, because just like Ahmaud Arbery, who was gunned down for jogging in his own neighborhood, it's true. It's not an exaggeration, and we have to be extra cautious. So when we do that, we're angry, we're emotional. You know, sometimes it can't be business when we talk. Sometimes you're gonna get either sass, we're gonna be crying, we're gonna be mad, and to at least empathize or sympathize with us that, hey, like, I get it. Like, they have to worry every time their child goes out that they're a target. You know, even little kids, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, we have to worry about that. In the school system, you don't know, there are secret races that are teachers. So imagine your child being treated horribly and then them being scared to come back to you. Like, imagine that. Imagine your child being shot at or killed. You cannot understand or fathom that additional pain to all the other worries, because we can have anxiety being mothers saying, well, I don't want you to get into an accident in the car. We can worry our hearts out. I don't want you drinking and driving. Got it. But on top, you're an extra target, so I don't even want you driving somewhere, and you should have the freedom to do so. And even us as black women, and we go out and we're targeted. Who's gonna protect us even if our husbands are away or they're not here? Who's making sure that we're okay? So again, the best thing to do is just to listen, because there's so much anger, there's so much hurt. This has been going on for the longest time. It's just now coming to light. It is not okay. And it's not okay to be silent, because kids are being killed. It's not, oh, well, they get a yogurt and your child doesn't, even though that's going to hurt my little heart anyway. It's more, we're being targeted, we're being killed. We're being killed. The thing is killed. We're being murdered. And it's not just murdered from a white person or a black person. It's murdered by the people that are set to protect us. So when we're so passionate and you guys don't, you know, nobody wants to have an uncomfortable conversation. I don't. I'm like, oh, I don't like to have it. But now we have to speak. Like, I at least have to speak up. And so if you're a person that's like me, we don't like to have uncomfortable situations. We don't like to make other people feel uncomfortable. just think about that mother who's, uncomfortable when she goes somewhere by herself with her children, or she feels unprotected. We have to stand up for what's right across the board. So it's just best to just listen, because there is a pain, an additional pain that comes with being black, being a black mom, being a black wife, and just being a black woman in general. And that's it. And it's not necessarily pity, but it's like, all right, like, it's wrong, let's just do the right thing, especially when you're Christian too.
Listen before you speak, because I remember like this in all situations. Listen before you speak, but especially if it's something you don't understand. And I'm like a nerd, so I'm like always like researching things. Like, I want to know before I say anything about it, or before I have an opinion about it. I need to know fully about it. And I am amazed at the amount of people who have an opinion on racism when you ain't black. So it's like, I'm not a guy, so I couldn't have an opinion on like what it is to be a man and feel that pressure of protecting and leading a family. I have to ask my husband. And if you're not black and you have an opinion before researching, realize you are participating in the same system that perpetuates the thing that the black person is complaining about. You're not listening. So, and I feel like listening is probably the easiest thing to do, because you don't even have to put yourself out there to listen. You really just have to ask, or research, or watch a video, or read and learn. And I remember somebody saying, they were talking about, it was a term, masculinity, toxic masculinity. And they said something about it, and they were like, now we're calling masculinity toxic. And I was like, I can tell they didn't learn. I can tell they didn't research it before they started talking. And you can tell the same thing when people talk about racism also. And if you're not listening and you're just forming an opinion and you're just talking and you are doing the exact same thing the person is complaining about, you're not helping, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not loving. Imagine if Jesus would have looked at the blind man and said, but you've been blind your whole life, you just not want to say you're blind? Like, oh, you've been poor your whole life, you just not want to say you're poor? You've been bleeding your whole life, you just not want to say you're bleeding? You're fine, like, stop complaining. Moving on to the next person. Don't be like that. Jesus was not like that. And we like to toot about Christianity and God and Jesus and love, but love is action. Faith is action. You need to listen and you need to be educated, because you really can't affect change or you can't bridge the gap or do anything without having a foundation of facts and compassion and love and understanding. You really can't. You're just kind of out there floating around and perpetuating the same harmful system. And honestly, we shouldn't have to be yelling in the streets. Nobody should have to be protesting. Think about your child. They don't have to break things for you to realize they're hungry. Yeah. You know?
Well, no one was listening whenever Kaepernick first did, his peaceful, stance. No one was listening, and I think that's the problem. They kept saying, I'm not racist, but I don't think he should kneel during the anthem, but you're not listening to what he's saying, and that's the problem, and it's taking us this far to finally start having these conversations.
And I think that's part of the looting too. A lot of people are saying, why are they looting? Why are they looting? Well, some people felt like, well, when I was just being normal in my everyday self, you didn't listen. But when I took some of your merchandise, I got your attention. So it wasn't about what they had in their hand, what the possession was, what they could do with it. It was about getting that conversation going. You recognizing that I'm hurt, that I'm in pain, that I'm doing this for a reason. So every looter out there wasn't trying to just be wrongful. They were trying to get somebody's attention and arouse something in you so you could have a reaction, and maybe together we can make a change. It wasn't about the merchandise. It wasn't about, taking from your own community. It was about getting that conversation going.
And it's really interesting you say that, because sometimes people they feel like it's easier to broadcast certain situations than others. So with Ahmaud Arbery, it struck with people because, let's be honest, I know in the town I live in, if you roll through the middle of town, white people are jogging all the time.
Yes.
And that was like, whoa, wait a minute, like, I jog. That is a problem. Wait a minute, like, we can't allow that. But if it's somebody like out in Sterling selling cigarettes, we're like, I don't really know about that. I mean, maybe he shouldn't be selling cigarettes. But I like this post I saw. It said, no, your job as a police officer is to protect and serve, which means if they are wrong, you arrest them and you get them to the jail. That's your job.
Right.
That's your job. It doesn't matter if they murdered 10 people or if they just selling cigarettes.
Right.
Your job is to arrest them as peacefully as possible, and I know that's got to be somewhere in the handbook, as peacefully as possible, and then get them to jail. Like, that's it. And we should
learn that somewhere.
I mean, it is.
I'm sure y'all learned that.
It is. Like, and we shouldn't, as black people, even as black people, sometimes we're looking for the easier situation to promote so that everybody can understand. So jogging was like a big thing. Like, oh my God, he jogs. Or what's the guy's name? Isaiah. He plays the violin for Cats. Elijah. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. But we shouldn't have to pull him up higher than we pulled up somebody else just because he was a really, obviously a nice guy. And especially Christians, because we're taught to love everybody.
Right.
Everyone. Like, everyone. Christian. You can't take people's lives and you can't justify
It's not for them
it.
to judge.
Yes.
Yeah, even if it's like somebody's jogging, somebody's like committing a crime, like you still can't just kill somebody. Like that's not your decision to make.
Right.
And like all of our heroes, like you're talking about Christian people loving one another, people we love. We love Moses. We love David. We love, you can go on Paul. They all were murderers and they all like did horrible things, but we don't like go talking about that. We love those people, you know, like you have to love people. You can like acknowledge faults, but you have to love people and treat people kindly, you know.
Something about things are better than they were. And I was reading this book and she was talking about, I've heard, we had a black speaker come to our church several years, like 2 years ago, and he was talking about race relations. And one of the things he said is it better than it was? And he said, well, for me, yes, because people burn crosses in my front yard and people aren't doing that anymore. So yes, is it better? But in the book I was reading, she was talking about how for that generation, yes, it's better. But really for my generation and even really the generation after me came up with all of these, when the police brutality had started getting worse, they didn't see that first part. They've heard about it, but they didn't live it. So this generation is almost more angry because they didn't see that reconciliation, just like I guess the civil rights movement didn't see things that happened with the Emancipation Proclamation. Like, so they were angry. Like that, it kind of goes off where you're born of this mentality of, well, aren't things better than they used to be? And I really tried to sit in my own thoughts and think about the first time that I realized either that there was a difference or that it was perceived to be worse to be one or the other. And not even from my parents, just in your everyday life, like thinking back to when you noticed for the first time that black people were treated differently than white people. And it is, I feel like sometimes we grow up, like, because I grew up in the colorblind time, that was, everybody was singing about being colorblind, and
we love everyone.
Nobody would mind if you would be colorblind. Like, I can remember the song lyrics and everything from church camp, like, so that's even been something hard for me, because it's like, I don't think I recognized racism early enough. I think in my thoughts, instead of, like, in the book, she was talking about how young some children grasp the concept. I remember my son asking the first time why he was brown and we were pink when he was 2, but I don't think I realized that because of the way I was raised, almost in that generation of, in church, that's how it was. You just looked past everything. I don't think I recognized the issues early enough, So that's just another interesting part of that it kind of depends on where we were born, depends too on how we have perceived race issues.
I think that too, what's sad for me, and I think about your son, is that it goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is that I have to explain that so young to my own children, where I can't just teach them to love everybody, because I have to, like, and it's a two-edged sword, because I don't want you to go into, for Jimmy, which is my brown son, I don't want you to go in and think that the world is against you.
Yeah.
So I have to walk that line of teaching you that some people are going to treat you differently because you're brown, and you're not going to be given as many opportunities to act out in class. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, you can't do that, you're my brown son, you can't do that. Like, I want to just shake and be like, you can't do that. But at the, like, no, but really, like Braden, he could probably do that, but you can't, because Braden's light and he has straight hair and you're gonna be fine. Like, I hate, like, but at the same time, I don't want to create a problem in your mind where you feel like everybody is against you. But that goes back to when you were talking about it. I think about, I don't want to create a problem that's not there, so that in the future we're not talking about this. We're not talking about the fact that my mom can't even go to school without having an egg thrown at her head. You see what I'm saying? That's her generation. But now, like, I don't want my kids, when they're this age, to be having conversations about, well, yeah, the police just used to kill black people in the street and we had to protest for them to even look into the murders. Like, that sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, on the surface, you're like, so you had to find these cases that were so ridiculous that people would listen.
Yes.
Because if he was selling cigarettes, he shouldn't have been selling cigarettes. Why were you selling cigarettes? Okay, fine. So you had to shut it down. You had to just let it go. Like, okay, I gotta find a case that is so, there could not have possibly been any reason for this man to be killed, to have us even talk about the fact that black people are being killed. So Jimmy's gonna look and be like, oh God, Mom, you grew up when they were just killing people, and you had to come up with a guy who was jogging for people to even listen to your story. And now we can talk about some of these other cases, which are, why are they killing people? Like, we shouldn't be allowed to just kill people. But I had to start with the most innocent. He was jogging in his neighborhood and somebody killed him. You know what I mean? He was like, because even if they fight back, no, he shouldn't have fought back, and that's why he died. You got to teach your children not to fight back.
Yeah.
So hopefully, like you said,
Like with Trayvon Martin. Well, he shouldn't have fought back. That's what it is. That's what it was. He shouldn't. So the reason that George Zimmerman got off is because Trayvon Martin, even though he had gotten,
I want to say he might have thrown the first punch, but the guy had been following him and got in his face.
Yeah.
It was the standard.
They
ground.
gave him the authority and the okay to kill a black person.
And
I think it probably, if it was not prolonged, it would have stopped. That's why there's been a lack of sympathy for a lot of things that are going on in the violence, because people are fighting back, because this is centuries of oppression. And if you are a Christian, if you are a friend, when you see that, it should not sit right with your soul. When stuff like that happens, it's serious. Not only jail, but actually murders. Like, we'll fight, hard down fight for animal rights. Animal rights get so much more, but we'll have immigrant children in cages and we don't care, they're Mexicans, go back to where you came from. Or we'll have black people being murdered in the street. Oh, whatever, but I have a black friend, like, that was something different, he did something. It's not okay, and I think that's why we just don't care. I don't care anymore about sparing anyone's feelings, because people are dying. They're being murdered by uncles, brothers, and there's even black cops too. These are all people that no one's telling them, hey, what you're doing is wrong. These are people in immediate circles. And so the best thing that someone can do is actually speaking up and saying, what makes you think that that is okay? If you're scared, you don't have to go. If you don't feel comfortable going on the front line, I get it, because there's black people who don't feel comfortable fighting on the front line and protesting. But at least if you hear something, nip it in the bud and say something around your group, because you have a relationship with your family or your friends. And if you continue to sit around ignorant ideas and minds, that is a part of the problem. If you do not teach your children that you should treat everybody, that they're equal, then that is a part of the problem.
A son that's about my age, and we were on the phone, and she said, you know, I'm glad it's your generation that's leading it. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, because I'm glad young people, she's like, I feel like that is the essence of younger people. That's what you do. You get out there and you say something. She's like, I'm 40, I got a nice little job, I done dealt with my stuff, and when I was your age, I got out there and I was out there and I spoke and I was there. but now I do feel like it is your generation's time. And it's interesting because sometimes I feel like young black people get the image of angry young black person, and I've even seen some comments, oh, you're protesting but you're not at work, or oh, you're complaining but you could be at college. And it's really odd because even like you said, well, nobody asked why he was selling cigarettes. Maybe he was selling cigarettes because that is legit the only thing he could do. Maybe he was selling cigarettes because he really couldn't get a job. And my own brother is a veteran, and I have seen him not get a job just because he was black. And he's a veteran, and oh goodness, don't we love our veterans? We do not if they black. So I think it's just interesting to listen, to ask why, and for this generation to not be afraid to speak up, to say something, to listen, to make a change, because we are literally affecting the world that our children will live in. And wouldn't it be awful for you to be the parent of the child that's on the news that says something totally racist? Or wouldn't it be awful if you were the, wouldn't it be? Like you would be like,
that TV.
That's it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Oh, and they're gonna be knocking on your door like in 2 days when they find out where you live, because you can find out things. Or wouldn't it be awful if it's my wonderful, cute little curly-headed, bubbly kid that something happened to? Right. And think about your brown friends and their kids. I kind of cringe when people are so, oh my gosh, your babies are so cute, because I'm like, yeah, he's gonna grow up to a really big black man. And he is not going to be cute and cuddly unless you're capable of loving him like that. My daughter, she's already so bubbly, and sometimes I'm like, I just want her to relax because I know that you can't be that loud and black. And it hurts to have to kind of want to, I don't know if I should tell her to calm down or just let her be herself. That is, we are affecting the world that our children live in. That's basically what I'm saying.
2 degrees, and sometimes that's still not enough. I have the 5-year experience, that's still not enough. So I'm like, Mariah, you gotta be better. Mariah, you gotta do better. Mariah, don't watch this video. You need to be better. And I don't wanna overdo it where I'm pushing her. And with my son, son, you have to, it's not just enough to be black. It's just not enough to be Tomic. It's not enough to be Mariah. You gotta be excellent at something. And I feel like you're struggling as a parent because you're kind of taking that innocence from them, they're having to grow up too fast. And I'm just trying to slow down, don't worry about it. You can watch another video on JoJo right now, but in a little bit,
this algebra.
Go ahead, finish JoJo, but we're gonna come back to this arithmetic or whatever. You struggle with trying to raise your kid in this world and knowing that society would judge them or perceive them a certain way. And that's why my blog is She Is More, because I've lived a life where sometimes it's not enough, but I have to tell myself it's enough, and I have to tell my kids, you're gonna be enough. You're enough already. You're gonna grow into something that's enough. But in the back of my mind, you gotta be 10 times quicker than that. You gotta be 100% sharper than that. You can't never let up. But sometimes I find that it's hard for me to find that balance to let them just be okay and be kids and explore and play. But the other part of me is no, I know you could be doing I know you could be doing something right. There's edifying your mind right now, but I struggle a lot of times with that balance because that fear of just putting them in the world. Did I give them everything they needed? Did I give them those fundamentals to survive and thrive? And if something happened, will they be resilient enough? I just have so many years with them where they're 16, you're ready to be with your friends. So I have only a few years with them, and it's just so much that I have to give them. But I struggle sometimes with being overbearing or not being bearing enough. So that's kind of a fear I live in, but I try to find that balance where I'm not overdoing it and overkilling it.
So I am a mom of 3 white boys, clearly, and that I don't have to have those hard conversations about what y'all have shared, which is just heartbreaking. But trying to find a way to explain it to my kids and finding that balance, like you said, I don't want to wreck their world. I want them to know that people just in our home, we love each other and we surround ourselves with people that love each other, and trying to explain to them slowly in bits and pieces, there are people in this world that don't like somebody else just because of the way they look, and they're like, what? And we were talking about Juneteenth, on Juneteenth, just explain the holiday, and I'm trying not to be super emotional, trying to explain slavery to my children, which I know that I have to explain that to them. But it's just hard, which I know it just sounds like petty. Like, it's so hard, I have to tell my kids about other people that are oppressed. Like, that should not be something that makes me like sad, but just like wrecking their worldview and like me coming to terms with these horrible things that have happened and going like, what? Like, what? How is this a thing that happened? And people just let it happen. And just trying to get like an 8-year-old's mind around it or a 6-year-old's mind around it, and just on that note, explaining all the hard things and how we deal with it on like a day-to-day basis is just like making sure that they see people that don't look like them, that we read books that are not just people that look like them, that we surround ourselves with people that don't look just like them, because that's not representative of the world or the kingdom of God. Like, we don't all look the same. We celebrate diversity. So that's what we do like on a day-to-day. But having hard conversations, just like anything, you don't tell your kids, like talking about sin with your kids. Like, I don't want to tell people about my kids about hell. Like, I don't want to talk about anything bad. Like, you know, like, the world is beautiful. We all love one another. And like being like, people used to like buy other people. Like, that is not okay. And like explain that to an 8-year-old. It should be like horrifying for all of us. But just given that you want to like talk to your kids about it, but it's hard to like wreck their peaceful, wonderful mindset too.
Their innocence.
Yeah, like it's finding the time to break that is hard.
Yeah. We can't exactly sit there and talk about slavery because he's gonna be like, oh look, like let me have my toys like the whole time. So like what you kind of talked about how like you're, you know, reading books and watching movies and celebrating diversity in that type of way and showing and exposing is really what we've been doing right now. And then like we're just kind of as family, like very warm people, and so like we just always talk to everybody in our neighborhood. We have people, one of our neighbors across the street, he's black, and then we have a neighbor down the road and they're from Iraq, and then some of the other people in the neighborhood are white, and so like we talk to everybody, and we bring Izzy around, and Izzy's like the most loving child if y'all have ever met him. He's just like play with everybody, love everybody, and he doesn't care what anybody looks like, but there are studies that show like around 4 or 5, that's when kids start picking and choosing who they want to spend time with and play with. So like I think just really just letting him just like love everybody and seeing us love people is going to be what really, you know, cements like for him, like mom and dad really just always loved everybody, and so that's what I'm going to do too. And yeah, that's just what we try to do. And even like if we go to the park, like if he's playing with whoever, I don't really care, you know. And so that's just kind of what we do. We just are like, we love everybody, you know, and it's normal. And like kids, like I think they can be really good teachers for us.
Yeah.
You know, seeing their innocence and seeing how they love people, like love everybody is just something that we all can learn from.
Yeah, I think like going back to just having the hard conversations and explaining it to kids, it's also like super important.
Right.
Because I'll find like my oldest is 8, and like if we don't talk about differences with him, like things are weird. Like, oh, that person has that. That's weird. And you're like, okay, that's not weird. Like, it's not weird that they're dressed that way. It's just different. So giving them like the language to use is so important. And I also got really great advice about like the books and TV shows, like the things we're showing our kids. They're showing diversity. Don't make it always be about like, this is about racism and this is about like make it just normal, like a normal story, because it is normal.
Right.
And not be like, we're reading this because you need to learn to love black people.
Because they have the books that are
You know, because I feel like that's happening.
But
right
that's
now.
right.
It's happening. Right.
That's how it's missing people looking at it, right?
This is embarrassing to admit, so I don't even know why I'm sharing it, but safe zone.
It is.
So I'm going back to my childhood when I made my first racist statement. Here we go.
Oh.
Okay, young child, and I was watching my favorite show, Boy Meets World. Favorite show. I don't know if you ever saw it, but one of the white friends on the show, Sean, he started dating the black girl, Angela. And at the time, I don't know if it was because I just
Had a crush on him?
probably had a crush on him. I was boy crazy even back then. But I don't know, if I just looked at my own family, my parents. There's no interracial couples in my family at all. And I looked at my mom and I said, he can't date a black girl. Like I said that as a child, and she was like, yes, he can. And I just want to give my mom props there, because like they taught us so young that that's not okay for you to discriminate. You know, against
Boy Meets World. At
I
that
know.
point, I just realized that
That was huge. That was not happening in that era.
Or like Friends, when I started dating the black girl, that was like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Boy Meets world, that was like, I remember that being kind of like earth shattering when that happened because it was a big deal. It was almost like that first kiss on Will and Grace when Will and Jack kissed.
Oh my gosh,
that was the first time that had been on TV. And I think with Boy Meets World, I would have to look it up to be 100% positive, but I think it is the first time that they had an interracial relationship of that age portrayed on TV because they weren't like two like 30-year-old people.
Right.
So it was very prominent in my mind when that
Like I still remember it. I still remember her reaction, and I feel like she almost failed as a mom that I even said that because she was like, "Oh no, it's okay, you know." People of different races can be together. They should be together if they love each other, that sort of thing. So that first kind of started the conversation when I was younger. And then me as a mom now, I have 2 young girls. So one's 3 and one is a 1-year-old. So, you know, we're not having those in-depth conversations yet, although it's coming. But I will say, you know, we were very specific in what books we pick out for them, or you know, toys and all those kind of dolls and things like that, because I do think it does start that early on. You know, it starts at home, just having those conversations, and also just like Sarah said, you know, just showing that we love everyone, and you know, everybody deserves the same opportunities.
What role does media play in racism? And I just have to dive into this because I'm not. So, because I think I'm going to say something that maybe people don't think about, but I noticed it yesterday, and ever since me and my husband started, we're like super healthy people. Like, we're basically vegan most of the time. And it's been very intentional about us doing it. And I've noticed that commercials, like, I didn't think about it until I grew up and I kind of started being healthier. But if you will look at a Walmart commercial, they run 2 types of commercials for every holiday: a black commercial and a white commercial. Black commercial is going to have soul music, and it's going to have, I kid you not, just check it out. It's going to have soul music, and it will have black people, but the food they're going to show are usually, like soul food, not so healthy. But when they show white families, they're like green beans and, you know, like stuffing, like a nice roasted chicken, and I was like, oh, well, that's a little odd, you know. But then I noticed when it wasn't holiday season and they would just run commercials, when they were advertising things that were really, really cheap or really, really on sale, they were advertising towards black people. And if they were advertising something like electronics, they would advertise it towards white people. If you check a McDonald's commercial, when they're advertising something like that's gonna cost like $4 or $5, like I don't even eat McDonald's, so I guess like a Big Mac or something, they would advertise it towards Asian or white people. But if they're advertising 35 goddamn nuggets for $1, then they were going to advertise it towards black people. This is not incidental. You must realize they hire people who spent 4 to 8 years in school for marketing to ask them, how do we portray directly this product to our to a certain audience? And although it may seem normal, you must think like black people do buy things that aren't on the dollar menu. Right. You know, black people can't afford those things. A lot of companies, they don't advertise at all towards black people because they do not expect black people to buy the product or show up there. But if it is something that is cheap or frivolous, like an Xbox, it will be marketed towards black people.
Also marketing to the stereotype and not to the demographic either.
Right.
You know, because like a lot of those things, those are stereotypical things that we've been taught that, you know, just through, I mean, even through media, that this is typically what black people like and this is what white people like, but they're playing to the stereotypes. So that even further just solidifies that into people's minds. So kind of another thing that I was thinking about the whole media aspect is like not even with marketing, but just representation in general is I thought, I have personally thought like, okay, well, yeah, you know, I mean, there's more shows that it's, you know, a few white people and a couple of black people on the show. And it's like, well, you know, if you look at the demographics, like of how many white people there are in the country and Asian people and black people, that kind of, you know, fits the balance. But I think that mentality is wrong because it needs to be a 50% equal representation because everyone watches TV. Whether it's 17% of the population or 70% of the population that's a particular color, everyone's watching TV. So if it was more not even 50%, just saying, like, it needs to be more equal. Where if there's, we don't want to get to a point where we're breaking it down to numbers, like, oh, you have to have 10 white people and 10 black people.
Yeah.
But it needs to be more of that shift of mentality, that it should be more equitable division, instead of looking at it like, well, there's less like, even I see people say that with, well, why would we want to have shows with a gay couple every single time? Because, I mean, the gay population is very small. And it's like, well, no, that's not true, because they, even if they are a smaller percentage of the population, they still watch television, and that is where we are exposed to a lot of things, is on television. And there needs to be a more equitable division of how people are portrayed correctly also on television, and not in
also putting people in the
stereotypical.
lead roles instead of just always having
That's
the
the
white
black
people
friend.
and then they have
One black friend.
the black characters.
And all
always
she
on the
does is
side.
co-sign. All she does is, yeah. Like,
Or they're just there for the comic relief, or just
oh, yes, or they're just funny. Yeah.
like just having friends.
And I think
Dark skin, and, like,
TV,
even like Ursula, she's dark skinned in The Little Mermaid. It's like I like was watching these movies and I'm like, oh my god, like what am I teaching my child? So I really need to start being like more intentional. And it's like it's beyond just I guess it's all media, right? Television, and then what you see in movies.
Yeah,
all
but
that
I
is
think
media.
those are the
Yeah.
small things that I think get lost sometimes.
Right.
And unless you're intentionally, like even what you were saying about the commercials, if you're not intentionally
Right.
looking at things and making those decisions to see it, I think it passes over a lot of people's heads. The same with like the equitable division of who's represented on television.
Right.
I think people think it's good enough. Like, okay, having 2 black people and 10 white people, it's good enough, but it needs to be better, because
Right.
we're all exposed to TV.
Right.
I mean, everybody watches
Well, I
TV.
think, I'm sorry. No, I just think
It's a big subject.
too that will help people's, even if you're not thinking about it, it does shape your opinions. And that I remember in college, we were the table that divided the black section from the white section, like inside of the quad. And it wasn't intentional. It wasn't, I'm not gonna say, oh, all the white people were racist and all the black people were prejudiced. It was truly just that you hung around the people that you know, you hung around the people that you grew up with, you hung around the same people that you grew up with. Like you just had in your mind. And so we were this table, and I remember pointing it out to my friend. She was like, we are the multiracial table. There's like a multiracial table in the middle. But I think that media, and I that not even dealing with the news, media, whether it is social media, whether it is TV shows, whether it is HBO, Netflix, whatever, I think that when people begin to see that it's normal for different types of people to interact and not just have a few representatives on either side.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the black shows are all black, like the casts are all black.
All
like, you know
black,
what I mean?
right.
All the movies are all black, and they have like like Gary Owens. We got Gary Owens, we're multiracial. You know what I mean? Like, no, really. But truly, I feel like that if people were to see it as normal to have a mix like the room that we're sitting in, then now when you branch it out into everyday life, everything becomes a mix, because that's what you're used to seeing as opposed to pockets.
and not just that, like seeing black people and other people do things that you don't normally see. I noticed like when a show is all black, it's like the writer had to purposely write the black people at such a high level as, oh, they're doctors and they're lawyers and they're engineers.
Are
because
they
you don't-
really like?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like in a show, like I remember watching a documentary on Friends, and people were complaining like, dude, there are no black people on the show. And it was interesting because these people on Friends were living totally normal lives, and we're watching them, get better and better in their careers. And there were no black people. And in essence, I know black people who are doctors and lawyers and counselors and all kinds of things. And I think seeing other people in different races in different places in life that you may not normally see them. So when you do sit down in a financial office and the guy that comes in is black, you're not like, oh, I wonder, can he really handle my money? Because you've never seen it. You've never
And I think that's why the Cosby Show was such that whole ordeal, which I'm not even going to that part of it.
Right.
But, you know,
It
it was so
mean
hurtful.
something.
It was
It
hurtful
showed
for our
culture.
community because for a long time, you didn't really see two professional people on TV
Right.
raising a family. So, you know, whatever came out personally kind of hurt a lot of people because that was a lot of people's father figure for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, you don't really get to see, and they're doing better now. You don't get to see that dynamic, two parents loving the family, raising them to be open-minded, free, living people. But it kind of opened the conversation, and the direction has changed. And when I read the question, how does media divide us? I thought of it, one with the news, and two with how we've been protesting. And a lot of conversations right now that are saying, look at all the white people, look at all the white people. All my life, I went to predominantly white schools. Woodlawn, I went to Southeastern, predominantly white. So it's kind of interesting to see people say, look at all the people come together. But over the weekend, I watched Selma for the second time. Have y'all watched Selma?
Yes.
And it was a lot of white people then. So I think it's just how the media portrays how things, it's a lot of people who are unified, who's behind the movement, and they're doing the right thing, but the media will make it look like it's a one-sided thing, and it's not. And I protested before when Alton Sterling's situation happened in Baton Rouge. My husband said, I'm going downtown. I was like, I'm going with you. You know, we're going. I feel the same way. We're going together, and we went. And that was my first protest, in which my grandmother, she's big on Martin Luther King marching and all that type of stuff. So I felt I was doing something really big that my family would have been proud of. And so we went down there, and I too was surprised that it was a lot of white people. I was surprised. I mean, it was so organized, but the media portrayed that we were monkeys, we were fighting, that it's chaos. It was so organized. Somebody had fig Newtons, they had juice, it was so peaceful. People, I'm like, who thought of this? I am hungry.
I mean, every place I've ever been to has had water and like, I mean, it is so organized. And some of the fun runs I've gone to for school.
But if they show white people at the protest, then they're nice and happy with the sign. But if they show black people at the protest,
like-
they're acting a fool.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait a minute.
the media choose to portray the chaos side, the dysfunctional side. But when you're out there living, like really out there, and similar, this is like they were out there together. Nothing has changed. People do want to see change. It's just now we have more social media platforms to really expose this thing. So I think media wants to show one side, and like every time you turn on the Channel 5 News, you might see a black man burglarizing something, getting arrested for something. So you're gonna think black men are like really threatening people because that's what they want to portray. But my husband is a deacon in the church. He's he runs a Head Start. He has a Project Jump for people. But the news will make you think he could be a burglar. That so when you see a black man jogging, they just played a black man on the TV, just broke in and robbed the bank. So you're not getting that true deflection of how black men or how black families are being portrayed. So I think progress have happened, but I think the media has to do better with showing us being non-threatening, being family, being at the beach, so your Instagrams are promoting such greatness because you don't get that on the channel, at the 5 o'clock news.
Yeah. I know that the media, it affects everyone else outside of the U.S. So, I mean, you're paying people, Caribbeans and Africans and just anyone else who's black outside of the U.S., they look down on black people because of what they've seen in the media. And so you have this tension between African Americans and other black people. And it's been going on for years, but it's like they've been looked down upon. And then you have African Americans who think that Africans live in huts still. Like, they disrespect them a lot. It's crazy. So it's huge on how it affects things. And I've actually heard, you guys watch Insecure? No?
Yes, I know.
Even the Asian guy said that he loved his role because Asians were perceived as samurai or even like, gently or something. They don't have emotions. They're just either fighting or and he said his role in there, he actually was able to be emotional and to actually have a relationship. So it affects other races as well. Right. And like we're moving into a positive way right now in the media. And I think probably 2015, there was a lot of light-skinned black women. Like, you didn't see that many dark-skinned. So now we're kind of portraying everyone now. Like, it's a whole array now. So, but I think a lot of black women, they're still kind of needing more representation, especially when it comes to different types of curl patterns. Because usually, like, nice and bouncy, but it's like, well, what about my neck? So I need to see that on the screen,
I need to see the big curl that comes out of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always
Beyonce.
Yeah.
Like the one of the ladies, she was they brought like a really white lady to meet this like African guy. I think he was like Nigerian. And the mom goes, I don't want him to go to America because they don't like black people there. And that really just hurt me because it was like this little old lady and she was dead serious about it. And I think that's really interesting that you said that too, because I have a lot of Haitian friends. I even have a friend that's from he's from the Congo, and sometimes people, because his accent, people treat him like he's dumb. He speaks 5 fluent languages, and he's like smarter than most of us in this room. And it's really interesting that when he talks to people, before he opens his mouth, they're like, "Oh, he's a black guy," and then he starts talking, they're like, suddenly they can't hear him. I'm like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But
yeah, representation really matters.
It does.
But I really love this conversation. You guys are amazing. We can meet up again.
yeah.
And on top of that, I really feel like this will make some small of a change. I had spoken to some other women, and she kind of gave me reassurance that although I can't change the world, we can affect people who are around us in our immediate circle. So having this conversation I really feel like it's going to help and make a change within people that we know around us. And we all have platforms, so this might actually be really big for us moving forward in society. Thank you guys so much for making this possible, and we gotta share each other's Instagram handles too. But thank you guys so much for watching. Comment below. Like, we need to continue this conversation. Let us know what you guys think, and all their handles will be in the description box below as well. And we'll see you guys. Bye.